and you have one too. No Christian exists merely to make an honest living and to raise a family, enjoy retirement, and die. Every one of us is called to a ministry. There is a divine purpose in our lives. So the great incentive to take up your ministry is that our life is rooted in the unshakable sovereign purposes of God. You are not your own. You are God's. You are not self-made. You are God-made. You did not first choose him. God first chose you. You are not an accident. You are a design. Your life is rooted in God, and that is a great source of strength and stability in accepting God's call. Now that I know that God spent time forming me and knowing me and shaping me and consecrating me and appointing me, the next question is to do what? One author unknown said that there are two great moments in a person's life. The first is when you were born, and the second one is to discover why you were born. As we eavesdrop in on this divine conversation between Jeremiah and God, one thing is clear. We are all born for a reason, and it is our responsibility to discover that reason and redirect our lives towards God's optimal purpose for our lives. That means surrendering to God's lordship. Everybody wants a savior, but nobody wants a Lord. It's easy to surrender to a saving God, but when you have to surrender your whole life to the lordship of God, that means you won't go some places that you used to go. You don't make decisions like you used to make. You don't hang with folks. That's surrendering to the lordship. No one understood this better than the Apostle Paul, who met God on the Damascus Road on his way to persecute Christians, only to have a divine encounter with God, who redirected his life and his purpose. For years, Paul traveled all throughout Asia Minor, preaching the gospel of Jesus and converting Jews and Gentiles to Christ. Paul understood his purpose in life and writes an awesome and encouraging word to the church at Philippi. Paul says, I am confident of this very thing, that he who began a good work in you will perfect it until the day of Jesus Christ. Paul writes this word from prison at one of his lowest points in the ministry. Feelings of failure, isolation, abandonment, hopelessness, and despair. He was in prison for doing what God had called him to do, preach the gospel. But when his friend Epaphroditus visits with encouraging news, gifts, and money from the church at Philippi, Paul pens this letter in response to his gratitude for their love. The church at Philippi was a result of Paul's second missionary journey. Lydia opened up her home to Paul and Silas, who provided a base of operation for Paul's work and a place of assembly for the newly formed community of believers. It was at Philippi, if you remember, that Paul cast out the demon or the spirit of divination from a slave girl who had for many days been following the missionaries with her cries. The masters of the girl seized Paul and Silas and brought to the marketplace before the magistrates. They accused the missionaries of teaching a religion that was illegal in Rome. A mob crowd ensued, and Paul and Silas were beaten with rods and thrown into prison because they had caused such a ruckus. It was at Philippi, while in jail, that Paul and Silas began to sing in their chains. And God sent an earthquake to shake the foundations of the jail and loose the jailhouse doors. Paul stopped the jailer from taking his own life for fear that the prisoners had escaped, and his whole household became saved. That was at Philippi. Paul had a special love for the church at Philippi because they cared for him deeply and sent him gifts and assistance while he was in prison. And Paul offers for them strength for the journey with these words of encouragement. Being confident of this very thing, that he who began a good work in you will perfect it until the day of Jesus Christ. What a word, what a word, what a word. Being confident being assured, being full of conviction, beyond the shadow of a doubt, of this very thing. If nothing else, this one thing I know, being confident of this very thing, that he who began a good work in you, in me, in you, I can stop right there, that he who began a good work in you, him, the one who was in the beginning, began a good work in me, the one who looked down through the nebulae and the deepest, coldest regions of space and decided I'll make me a world, began a good work in me, the one who reached down into chaos and created cosmos, that one began a good work in you, the one who set the sun at the center, a raging ball of fire, and gave it such a luminous intensity that it brings light to planets billions of light years away. That one began a good work in me, the one who set the sun at the center and hurled 9 planets rotating into motion, each tilted on its own axis at varying degrees, and each one rotating at its own speed, began a good work in you, began a good work in me, the one who laid down lush green carpet of grass and tacked it down with daffodils and tulips and chrysanthemums and periwinkles, began a good work in me, the one who created tropical rainforests, dry desert places, murky swamplands, frozen tundras, took a finger and drew God's canvas of creations, babbling brooks, meandering meadows, luscious lakes, and tentacle-like tributaries, began a good work in me, the one who by God's own design created lions and tigers and bears and leopards and gazelles and giraffes and elephants and rhinos and flamingos and baboons and apes and monkeys and cows and sheep and goats and turkeys, ducks and horses and coyotes, dogs, and even snakes, Miss Pam, began a good work in me. Being confident of this very thing, that he who began a good work in me, the one who said I'm lonely, I think I'll maybe some people to take care of all this stuff, began a good work in me, being confident, assured of this very thing, this factuality, that God who began a good work in me will perfect it. Will perfect it. I love this translation from the New Revised Standard Version. It's the only way you find the word perfect.